In the beginning, Egypt was the center of the world. Here, men discovered oases of knowledge and gave birth to civilization. Here, men gave spirit to religion and established societies, ventured beyond deserts and seas, and bridged vast continents, fought great wars, and built landmarks of tyranny, as well as monuments of love. Today in Egypt, people from 2 continents are building the pyramids of modern times, the pyramids of friendship. In March 1975, at the start of a 25-day diplomatic visit to Middle East nations in behalf of President Ferdinand Marcos and the Filipino people, the First Lady, Madame Imelda Marcos, along with Philippine Foreign Affairs officials, set foot on Egyptian soil. At the Cairo airport, Madame Jihan Sadat, wife of Egypt's president, together with high-ranking Egyptian government officials, gave the visiting Filipinos a brief but warm welcome. Mesdames Marcos and Sadat and their parties flew straight to Alexandria, Egypt's ancient capital, where Madame Marcos would address an Afro-Asian Symposium on the social development of women. At San Stefano Hotel, venue of the symposium, Madame Sadat introduced to Madame Marcos the delegates and the officials of the Afro-Asian People's Solidarity Organization, sponsor of the occasion, including the 70-year-old Miss Bahia Karam, head of the women's section in the organization's permanent secretariat. The symposium was a high point in the celebration of 1975 as International Women's Year, for it brought together more than 150 leaders, mostly women, from Asian and African countries. It was fitting that both First Ladies would come to the same gathering. As leaders of the respective societies, Mesdames Marcos and Sadat represent the brilliance and genius of women as achievers of national goals and international aims. As a leader of the Pan-Arab Women's Liberation Movement, Madame Jihan Sadat stressed that the true and full development of society can only be realized insofar as women obtain full and genuine equality. She took note of the radical changes that have given women a better position alongside men, but observed that the struggle was far from complete and new progress can still be made. Madame Imelda Marcos, on the other hand, spoke of the personal and collective efforts of men and women alike, which are imperative in building a world of enduring peace and happiness. She cautioned, however, that in their desire to be productive members of society, women should not forget that they give life and therefore must nourish and cherish life to preserve humanity. Her description of the unique circumstances of Filipino women who have not had to fight for status was eye-opening and instructive to many of her listeners. The city of Alexandria, built 332 years before Christ, was Alexander the Great's prized possession when he conquered Egypt. The Greek king meant it to be his summer resort and naval base, the center of Greek culture and learning. And for hundreds of years, it was Egypt's chief seaport and capital. Little remains of the structures built in Alexandria. Only the ruins of the lighthouse of Alexander, one of the world's wonders, can still be seen. But over 40,000 valuable relics of the first 1,000 years of the city's history are housed today in a Greco-Roman museum. The city had known the faces of Caesar and Augustus, of Anthony and Cleopatra, of Hadrian and Turkish sultans. They all came, and like the Egyptian rulers before them, left their marks on the city. Here in this museum, awesome statues of kings and queens, soldiers and common men of that glorious period abound. The first night dinner brought together conference guests and delegates under a cordial atmosphere. Madame Sadat presented a special gift to Miss Karam. From Madame Marcus, a kiss. Symposium officials gifted the two first ladies with picture albums of the conference. In Alexandria, Madame Marcus and her party stayed in Palestine Hotel overlooking Montaza Bay. The hotel, in lavish Italian Baroque architecture, was once the summer residence of the deposed King Farouk. It has since been converted into a huge park with date palm groves, wooded hills, and private beaches. The building itself houses a casino and a museum of the former royal family. Madame Imelda Marcus finished her trip to Alexandria by signing and implementing protocol of the cultural agreement concluded between Egypt and the Philippines in 1962. Minister of Culture El Sibai signed for Egypt. The agreement provides for the reciprocal exchange of scholars, scientists and artists, and technical cooperation in health, education, social welfare, agriculture, and petrochemical industries over the next 2 years. Arriving at dusk in Aswan, southernmost district of Egypt, she was met by the governor or the Mufaza, among other officials. Madame Marcus at once felt the romantic spell of its capital city. Aswan City is a winter resort and commercial center. Here, in a simple brick residence, the Honorable Egyptian President Anwar Saddat was to meet the Philippine First Lady as he had met other contemporary world leaders before her. It is significant that the Philippine First Lady's Mideast diplomacy started in a meeting with President Sadat, a highly respected figure among Arab leaders. Once a professional soldier and leader of underground political movements who had risen to his country's highest post, President Sadat had only kind words for the Philippines. Madame Marcos brought with her a personal letter from President Marcos that spelled in detail the Philippine position on the secessionist movement being carried out in southern Philippines by the Moro National Liberation Front, a grouping of Muslim rebels. President Sadat gave assurances that he fully supported the Philippine president's firm stand against the rebel group's demand for an autonomous state. The meeting with President Sadat ended with a happy note. In appreciation of her host's hospitality, Madame Marcos presented the Egyptian first couple with gifts specially made by Filipino wood carvers. The meeting with the Egyptian president was the more important stage of Madame Marcos's visit to Egypt. But still ahead was a cultural tour arranged by Madame Sadat. Upstream from Aswan city are several monuments of antiquity, built upon or carved out of the hard granite hills that flank the trench of the Nile. From these ancient hills, monumental temples, palaces, tombs, and fortifications were built by the pharaohs. They quarried the stones, floated them close to the sites on barges during Nile floods, and hauled them into place piece by piece with ropes, levers, and sheer human strength. The decision to build a dam in Aswan threatened to flood the priceless archaeological sites along the Nile. Only by excavation or transferring to higher ground would they be saved from submersion. Work along these lines have been going on since 1958. Madame Marcos was shown the difficult and massive excavation being done to save the important temples in the island of Philae, where the Roman emperors, in the manner of the pharaohs before them, enhanced and completed the work of their predecessors who reigned in the last centuries before Christ. Madame Marcos's next stop was at the towering monument to Soviet-Egyptian friendship on the Aswan High Dam complex. The dam's colossal proportions compare even with the limitless vision of the old pharaohs. From the balconies of the tower, Madame Marcos saw at close hand one of the world's modern engineering wonders. The high dam, completed in 1970 at a cost of $1 billion, is 364 feet high and 12,565 feet wide, forming the huge Lake Nasser that was once the Nubian Valley. The pioneer Egyptians directed their energies to the arts of living and the arts of dying. To them, life was so gratifying that nothing was better than to go on living in a close replica of the land that they loved. Eternity, of course, was in the minds of the pharaohs who ruled Egypt from Luxor. Here, some 20 centuries before Christ, they built the grandest citadels in honor of the god Amun. They built, added, superimposed, overdid, outdid each other in fashioning facades and columned passages from rose-colored granite, ephrite, and alabaster. While they built palatial altars worthy of the gods, the pharaohs saw it proper to build themselves equally magnificent tombs. But they hid them from sight, and instead hollowed vast underground palaces in the desolate tract of the Nile valleys. Among the tombs in this necropolis of kings, queens, and nobles, no discovery is so celebrated as that of the boy king Tutankhamun. His tomb was unearthed in 1922 after 8 years of patient digging by an English archaeologist. Madame Marcus next visited the tomb of Queen Nefertari, Ramses the Great's favorite wife. Bright frescoes of actual and imagined scenes from the life, death, and rebirth of the queen decorate her burial palace. In her honor, Ramses, of all the pharaohs perhaps, left the most prodigious record of his reign, carving his exploits on stone and rock. From the Royal Valley, Madame Marcus headed back towards the Nile, on to the capital city of Cairo. In Cairo that night, the Philippine First Lady attended the performance of Egyptian folk dances at the Balloon Theater. Egyptian folk dancing is a sensuous, exuberant expression in music, costume, and motion of the vitality and joy of living of Egypt's valley and desert people. Madame Marcus warmly applauded both the attractive, spirited dancers and the brightly costumed musicians. The following morning, Madame Marcus ticked off another must on her Cairo itinerary: a visit to the Egyptian Museum, the most exhaustive repository of objects from Egypt's and perhaps the world's era of unparalleled grandeur. The museum houses a collection of artifacts representative of Egypt's 50 centuries of glory. The museum traces the history of Egypt through a dazzling display of treasures in varicolored stones, solid gold, and precious gems. Perhaps the most exquisite picture available in any museum of a vanished civilization is provided by the treasures from Tutankhamun's palatial tomb, occupying 4 halls in the museum. The outer coffin of the boy king's mummy has been left in its original tomb in Luxor. In the Cairo Museum are the middle and inner coffins, one of wood with gold and jewel inlay, and the other of solid gold inlaid with precious stones and amulets. Other samples of his funeral treasures are on exhibit in many world cities and may be brought to Manila. From the Cairo Museum, Madame Marcos was taken on a visit to the famous trio of pyramids on the Giza Plateau. The great pyramids, which belonged to pharaohs Khufu, Khafre, and Menkaure, are the single most amazing work of ancient Egypt. It is a great feat of engineering that required the most precise and logical calculations, perhaps with no equal even in modern times. Vast is the word to describe all that was Egypt's. For vast was the power of men who ruled the great Egyptian desert on which the imposing pyramids were built. In the long history of Egypt, the Arabians were among the later people who had crossed the deserts on camels to contribute their share to the synthetical Egyptian culture. Today, mosques and minarets, steel and glass skyscrapers reflect the old and the new Cairo. Egypt today is mainly Arabic. Islam is professed by 93% of all Egyptians, and the central Mohammedan mosque is in Cairo. Madame Marcos paid a brief visit to the sacred sanctuary, where an admiring crowd applauded her arrival and departure. That night, Minister of Culture Elsie Bai tendered a dinner in honor of the Philippine First Lady. Madame Marcos expressed her thanks to her hosts. She said that she has seen Egypt's commitment in ensuring the well-being of its people by broadening and modernizing its political and economic structures. She expressed the fervent wish that Egypt would find the peace with justice that it seeks and for which it has struggled so valiantly. The morning of the following day, Madame Sadat accompanied Madame Marcos to a modern rehabilitation center. The center is one of Egypt's most modern hospitals, with facilities for the treatment and rehabilitation of physically handicapped persons. The central building is mainly for therapy and surgery. Patients are housed in pleasant villas designed to provide home-like atmosphere. At the Tahara Palace guest house, Madam Marcos met with Filipino Muslim scholars in Cairo, accompanied by the Philippine envoy to Egypt, Ambassador J.V. Cruz. The scholars read their pledge of loyalty to President Marcos and the Republic. They urged Madam Marcos to pay no attention to rumor mongers who were spreading untruths about the religions. As for Filipino Muslims, they said that their legitimate and just aspiration, such as the desire for greater autonomy, should be considered in the context of the Philippine Constitution. Madam Marcos thanked the students for their affirmation of loyalty and said that President Marcos would be extremely glad to hear of their sentiments. She promised to work for their welfare and that she would talk to the proper authorities to extend them educational and travel privileges. On the situation in Mindanao, the First Lady assured them of President Marcos's resolve to seek a peaceful and just solution of the conflict and of the high priority given to the development of Mindanao. Madam Marcos signed another agreement firming up the relationship between Egypt and the Philippines, which have just become closer as a result of the visit. The Egyptian Information Minister, Kamal Abul Magid, signed for Egypt. The agreement provides for the exchange of news materials and other information between the two countries. It also facilitates travel of journalists between the Philippines and Egypt. There was a last luncheon given by Madame Jihan Sadat and wives of cabinet officials. The ladies exchanged gifts and mutual expression of hope that they would soon get together again. Madame Sadat accepted Madame Marcos's invitation to visit the Philippines. On this lovely day, Madam Marcos and her party were to end their visit. Brief as it was, the Philippine First Lady made great strides in establishing closer political, economic, and cultural ties between Egypt and the Philippines. She too felt the reciprocal feeling of her Egyptian hosts. For each meeting and agreement concluded was a stone in building what may be called the Pyramid of Friendship. Egypt was once the center of the world. The developments of modern times are giving rise to its importance in creating another world order. On this, Egypt may again be its birthplace. And the visit of Madame Imelda Romualdez Marcos may as well be the Philippines' contribution to this beginning.